All right, rewatchers, you've hit that time portal. We've hit the rewind button and it's ready for another retro rewatch.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we're back again. Hey, I wanted to mention this. Make sure to like, subscribe, share the podcast. Also, Chris wanted to mention this. So we're doing the different levels. Just looking back on it, we started and we got to go ahead and mention our guy. Started with Steven Seagal, then we moved up to Van Damme, then we did Rambo, Sylvester Stallone, and then we're going to do Conan, the classic 1992, Arnold Schwarzenegger. So I believe he's probably one of your favorites. We're moving up the action rung. How you feel about that?
Yeah, man, we're trying to get some better class on the show. We started in the gutter. Now we're getting to the top dog. The man who's lived three lives in one.
Exactly. Just trying to get Steven Seagal reference in there. So there it is. Check.
Yeah, literally today I got a request to not bring him up anymore. By the way.
Oh, damn. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to talk about Conan tonight, and go ahead and mention it. Rest in peace, James Earl Jones. Ironically, what was the other actor that passed when we were talking about it? Was it who was it? It was
Oh
another
man,
one
it
of
was
them.
Shelley Duvall. It was Shelley Duvall. Whenever we did we were doing Doctor Sleep, but we talked
That's
about The
right.
Shining with Doctor Sleep, and then she
Yeah.
passed. I think she passed like we had done the recording, but then she passed like the next day or something
That's
like
right.
that, and it was like recorded. So I mean, I said something. We probably should put something in the notes. I don't know that we did, but yeah, that was kind of wild that this twice because we planned to do this and then he died. Was it yesterday? I think day
Or,
before yesterday. It was
yeah. It's
when we
earlier
planned to
this
do
week.
this.
Yeah.
We were supposed to record this like 5 days ago, and we something came up, so we weren't able to. And then
Yeah.
this happens. It was like, ooh, maybe we shouldn't do anybody, another movie we really like. Find another Seagal movie.
Exactly, man. We're the Grim Reaper. But
Yeah,
rest in peace, 93, James Earl Jones. So sad. Hey, 93 is a great life. He had some great movies. Great voice, by the way. One of my personal favorites, best of the best. He was a great uh,
Tijuana Bang Bang. I don't,
taekwondo.
for anybody out there that's watched the Big Bang Theory, you might actually get that reference. Tijuana Bang Bang. Whenever he and Sheldon made their own convention because they couldn't get into Comic Con.
Okay, gotcha. Well, jumping right into it, Conan, 1982. This is one of Chris's requests. Gonna let him take it over. Man, the myth, the
Well,
legend, Arnold Schwarzenegger, the man.
yeah, you want to go ahead and give us some box office numbers like you normally do, and then we'll hop into some more. I will get technical on this one talking about something, but I'd kind of like to know the box office numbers. You hit us up with that every time.
1982, and then I didn't realize this. I guess just putting it together. Ironically, Rambo came out the same year. I know, and
Yeah,
this
that
is
that was why I told you we needed to do Conan because we got the class of 1982. We could compare, how good First Blood did and how good Conan did, which is kind of why I want to hear these numbers.
that is it. That's good. Good to know. You're hitting me with some knowledge there. All right, here we go. $20 million budget, 39 million in the US and Canada, and 68 worldwide. That's actually really good for a 1982 $9 million opening. But I'll say this: 20 million back then. Well, I think Rambo's what, 15.
I'm literally
So
pulling it up right now on the other computer. Like I was going to
yeah.
let you know. Let's
So
see.
that really great numbers, good turnaround, and I think this is probably one of. I mean, he did some movies before this, but do you agree, Chris? This put Arnold on the map with kind of no sword sorcery,
Oh,
but more action.
so
Sword.
all right, so yeah, so we're gonna come back to that because I definitely want to talk about that. So, looking at First Blood to just kind of recall and to really put this in perspective, like Arnold had that documentary that was a three-parter that came out on Netflix not long ago, and I never realized this because when I was a kid, Arnold was just larger than life, but he was always behind Stallone when it came to money, right? So those numbers you just gave for Conan were excellent, great numbers. For First Blood, it made 47 million in the US and it was 125 worldwide. So what's that, like double what Conan did in the same year?
That's
That's
right.
pretty incredible. He made a couple Rocky movies. People knew who he was. At this point in time, all Arnold had done was he'd had like there was a TV movie called The Villain. There was the first movie he did was Hercules in New York, which his voice was overdubbed and he wasn't even Arnold Schwarzenegger, he was Arnold Strong. And the movie is, I mean, literally one of the worst movies ever made. It's awful. And Pumping Iron. Now, Pumping Iron is
Yeah,
amazing.
it is.
I'm pretty sure you've seen that with me, probably 10 times. I don't know. I've seen the movie a lot because actually a really good. Well, it's not even actually fully a documentary. It's more like a docudrama because they kind of
Yep.
created stuff to like make some drama in it that wasn't really real. But anyway, they had the one guy that like stole the T-shirt that didn't really steal the T-shirt, and that like ruined his career because everybody thought he was evil for stealing that nice weightlifter shirt. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. But yeah, so but this is what catapulted him to international fame, like where people started to know his name. And then 2 years later, of course, we had the second Conan movie and the Terminator when he really went to superstardom. But it wasn't until I think it might have been Terminator 2 when he finally overtook Stallone for like annual box office. Up to that point, Stallone was always number one.
Mhm.
But anyway, so you kind of alluded to it. So recently, Arrow Video, let's see if I can get this where we can see it with the lights. Arrow Video came out with a special limited edition box set of the Conan Chronicles, and it's got Conan the Destroyer and Conan the Barbarian in it, and for the first time ever on 4K. So I definitely did want to talk about the movie proper, and we will, and I think we'll get to it through this. But I did kind of want, for the first time ever, kind of talk specifically about a release. So this thing comes with a whole lot of little goodies in it. If I can put you to sleep real quick. So it's got both movies. The second movie has one disc. The first movie has two discs, a 4K and a Blu-ray. And there's a bunch of extras that are new. There's a bunch of extras that are archival that you would have found on the DVD, stuff like that. There's a couple of like fold out posters that would be, I'm not going to fold them out. But they are in there for both movies. And then this is pretty neat. This is like 120-page book,
Wow.
something like that. It's 119-page book that's about both movies. And the thing is, it's not just like it's I'll read you the chapters real quick. The Conan the Barbarian cast and crew, that's very short. It's a page. Conan the Destroyer cast and crew, that's a page. Now we start to get into the good stuff. Days of High Adventure by Walter Chow. It's a 15-page essay. And then we get into 9 Days in Samaria, location with Conan. That's another 50-something page essay. Celluloid Deltoids behind the scenes of Conan 2. That's another 50-page essay. And then it's actually got something about King Conan. It's got about 5 or 6 pages. No, excuse me, it's 9 pages about King Conan and what the plans were and what they would have been, and part of the reason why it went into development hell. And it's just really, really, really cool that it's got all that. And there's actually a lot of boutique labels like Arrow that are doing special editions, limited editions similar to this that will have essays on the movie, which I really like. I read the books. Like for instance, I watched Second Sight put out a limited edition of a movie called The Borderlands. In America, it's called Final Prayer, and it had essays in it, and I read about it because it was a found footage movie early in the found footage boom or whatever you want to call it, and had some neat essays. So anyway, that's not something unique to Arrow. But I'm going to share my screen real quick and show y'all a couple things about the release that I think is important. It's something that I think people would want to know. Let's see. And I haven't done this in a while, so let's see if I can do it correctly. How about that? Can you see it?
Yep. Chris started sharing screen, but still, there it is.
Yeah, it seemed like it took a second to load up. Okay.
No problem.
So what's really neat about this is the first thing, it is a 4K, which already is, the best supposed presentation you could ever get of the movie. All right. It's going to be closest to the 35 or 60 millimeter or whatever it was shot in. Cause I mean, you can really truly see the film grain where it's not noise, like digital noise, like it would have been, especially on DVD and in some cases on Blu-ray as well. In this, the 4K includes 3 different cuts of the film in 4K for all of them through branching. What's neat, the theatrical cut, everybody would know. I mean, that's what you would have seen back in 1982, all that kind of good mess. And there's an international cut that you would have seen in like Germany and a few places in Europe. And what that predominantly added is at the end of the movie, after spoilers ahead, after Conan has had the fight with the two brothers that were part of killing his family, he goes to Thulsa Doom at the temple, And in the theatrical cut, he just kind of magically shows up there behind him. And in the international cut, there's more of, you see how he gets into the temple, because they've already been in it once with the thieves, right? Where they try and go in and get the princess, the call to action that Max von Sydow sent him on. And you see more of how he got in there, which is pretty cool. I like that. And then there's the extended cut that really, all that really adds is there is one scene that's about 40 seconds long that was included on the DVD release that came out back in the very early 2000s from Universal Pictures, that had a interaction between Subutai and Conan, where they're talking about, or Conan's talking about when he was a child, remembering the good things with his mom and his dad before they were slaughtered. And that was a really, I think, a very pivotal scene, because I mean, it kind of showed like the reason up to this point, in a lot of ways, he's been kind of monotone. He hadn't really said or done much of anything other than fight. He was just kind of fighting to survive. And for a minute, you kind of give a little more clarity to the reason why he is so bent on this revenge, as if you have to have it. I mean, you understand it through the action movie, but it's a good scene. It's acted very well between Conan and Subutai, and it gives his character more depth. So that's what's in the extended cut. Um, the next thing that's going to be interesting about this is they did Dolby Atmos, and that's excellent. I personally have an Atmos system. It's a 7.2.4 system, so I can really take advantage of that. Now, sadly, a lot of releases will have Atmos or a 7.1 track or something like that, where they took it from stereo or even mono. And I'm not exactly sure. It could be varying from release to release, but um, there's a lot of releases that they'll do these and they really don't do anything. I think this really kind of marketing speak, but I'll say this one was kind of a mixed bag. Whenever there were the music was playing, they did a great job of filling up all the speakers. Whenever there was speech, it wasn't really lifted the way it should have been, where it could overcome some of the blaring of the other speakers with the music. And some of the sound effects were very frontwards. They weren't really coming from around the room. Recently you and I watched Bloodsport, and we kind of talked about that on one of the earlier videos. And that was one of them where they did a great job with Atmos. They had cans getting kicked around in the alleyway and stuff like that, where it was really all around you, and it was truly Atmos. So this was somewhere kind of in the middle. You know what I mean? It's definitely better than the mono. It's the best sound presentation I've ever heard, because up to this, all it's ever really had was the mono. I
Mm.
think there might have been, I've bought this thing so many times. I mean, I've got the laser disc, I don't know if you can see Red Sonja over here or not, which isn't exactly Conan, but it kind of is. And then there was the DVDs, and then there were the Blu-rays. I did get the Blu-rays. I'm not sure I ever really watched them though, because I got the ones in Europe to get the international cut. So it was the longer cut. I know I saw those, and I feel like they had a 5.1, but it was kind of, like I said, it wasn't really an upmix, not really. And then, so let's talk about the transfer, because that's what everybody really wants to know, right? So what I've got here, there were three times in the movie that was kind of an anomaly, that I'm not really sure if it was the way they did the transfer. Supposedly they negative. I gotta admit, having seen stuff that has like an AI upconvert program, this looks like an AI upconvert program, not a film negative that something went wrong on. If you see here, you see these wavy lines. That should have been smoke that was in the background from the huts and stuff burning, but you can see here something didn't work quite right.
Yeah.
It's almost like it banded the smoke together in these kind of weird lines. There's another part later in the movie, in between, where Conan has had his call to action from King Osric, and he is going to the temple. And there's like a horse riding montage of him crossing, the dunes and the desert and this, that, and the third. And there's a scene where it's showing him walking from left to right on the horse, and it's very, very, very choppy. Again, almost like it's missing film frames. And then the scene, I almost kind of hate to bring this up, because a lot of times I try and keep this family friendly, but there's the scene at the end where they're going to get the princess, and there's the orgy. And right before they go up over the ledge to see what's going on, where they're having super happy, fun, pleasure time, and the color grade changes. It goes from being a very warm, normal, neutral color palette to where it turns green
Hmm.
for a second. And so I can't give this thing like a flawless upconvert or a flawless, like, I would really like to go back to the Blu-rays and compare that walking scene for sure and some of this other stuff and see if in the Blu-rays, because that would be really bad on Arrow's part if this is actually in the Blu-ray and they're claiming they took it from a film negative and what they actually did was upconvert, like a digital file or something. I hope they didn't do that. And I will say, other than those three instances, really truthfully, this was the best presentation of Conan I've ever seen by a lightning mile. I mean, there's places like in the movie where there's the flower field, and you've got all the hippies, before like they go to Thulsa Doom's, temple and he gets caught and they realize, that he's the guy that stole the eye of the serpent and stuff. And, all that stuff is just, it's very brilliant. It's very bright. It's very colorful. It's very defined. All that stuff was really good. And I can't say that it was that good on any of the Blu-rays. It certainly wasn't that good on the DVDs. So, I mean, for that part, I would say it is still worth the upgrade, but it's not without its flaws. You understand what I'm saying? And I
Right.
haven't seen Destroyer yet, which I mean, we're not really planning on talking about that today anyway. But there you go. There's our first kind of release review, if you will. Not necessarily about the movie, but about the content of the actual physical media. So I'm gonna give
Yeah.
it to you to kick
Yeah.
us off on the actual movie.
There we go. So yeah, appreciate that. That's a good breakdown. Always Chris coming with is interesting and his unique physical media. I watched
I don't believe in
this.
streaming, and all of you. I mean, for anybody, just real quick, I'm gonna
Okay.
let everybody know. So I've got a 135-inch 4K projector screen, so I know that's not common.
Right.
I just said before I got a 7.2.4. I mean, it's a severe top dollar sound system. I mean, we're
Right.
talking five digits. I noticed the difference, whenever streams like kind of like, power down, like whenever you lose a little bit of a quality gap or whatever like that. I mean, it's bad. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? So the physical media doesn't have any of those kind of issues, and the sound is always top tier. So that's
Right.
that's my reason for physical media being so important.
There you go. I haven't watched this in years, and this looked really great again. I know I'm always mentioning that, but I used Voodoo, the late great Ryan Brewer. I hope he's watching down. I'm sure he's laughing at our retro rewatch here. But hey, great transition, and the picture was great. I watched the other day. But what I want to bring up, so the score, as everyone knows, the dun dun, just that
One
was
of the
epic.
best scores of all time. Like
It was.
seriously, one of the most iconic. I mean, when you hear that boom, 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 it's Conan. Like there's
Yeah.
no missing it.
James Earl Jones, first off, is a great villain. Reading in the behind the trivia off of IMDb said he was actually a last minute replacement from like Broadway. He and Arnold Schwarzenegger became friends on set. Schwarzenegger helped Jones stay in shape, and Jones as well coached Schwarzenegger on acting. So that was cool. Great villain. When it showed Conan through kind of going through the years, him pushing the wheel. So I know it showed him kind of coming from like a kid up to a boy or whatever. So I'm like, did he do this for like years and this built his physique? So that was just something
So
because he was, of course, Jack because it's Arnold Schwarzenegger. And also, it'd been some years since he was retired from Mr. Olympia, and he actually got back almost into Mr. Olympia shape for this.
biggest he ever was. But after pumping iron, I think this was the biggest he was, because you're right. He had just competed in the Mr. Olympia like a year or two before this, going back coming out of retirement, and he was still just gargantuan.
Right.
But you talk about the beginning with his family getting slaughtered, and then he goes to first off, I would love to know what he's milling, because he's just pushing that thing in that mill for, like 20 years or something. And it's
Yeah.
not that you have to know, but I would love to know what it was. But the way I took it was, it starts the very first thing you see in the movie is the quote by Friedrich Nietzsche about what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And so he goes with like the entire village, like the entire village's children all go to the same place and they're all pushing it. And there's this slow dissolve over time, and there's less kids. They're growing up. There's less kids. They're growing up. There's less kids. And then there's just him. So, like, when I was a kid, I don't even know that I realized that all these people were disappearing. But
Good
it
point.
could be like, okay, well, they found another job for him. They need him to do something else. That's possible. But based on the first thing being that Friedrich Nietzsche, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, I believe what we're supposed to take from it is Conan's will to survive is greater than anyone else's, and everybody else dies off pushing that stone except for him, and he
Hmm.
becomes a demigod. I mean,
Right.
there's a lot of getting a little off the rails, but getting back on it. Like there's a lot of mythology in this thing that really
Yes.
is it. You know, it's based off of graphic novel comics by Edward R. Pressman. But there's a lot that was there before this movie was even made. But there's stuff like Prometheus, you know, with like giving people fire. They've got Crom, where he's
He was
giving
like a
people
pagan god,
steel.
right?
Right. You know,
Yeah.
they've got that kind of illusion. They've got Viking kind of lore with the Valkyries and Valeria, you know, who is his wife, who eventually does come back as like a Valkyrie spirit, you know, that looks like she's a warrior in Valhalla.
Mhm.
You know, there's a lot of stuff where he's pulled from all these different things, and I can't tell you if they were in the original graphic novels or not, but they're clearly here, and that's kind of where they came from. Um, so anyway, but that's what I took it to mean with the stone pushing. You know what I'm saying? And you talk about that passage of time and him becoming larger than life, and of course, but he's still innocent. He doesn't know anything about anything because I mean, the next scene they're fixing to put him in like a pit for a gladiator, and he has no idea why he's there. You know, he's like a 5-year-old child.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, yeah, completely agree. I just always wondered about it. I kind of, as you're older, you kind of look into things a little more. Also, the woman as a demon, that was an interesting one. And man, she was scary. I remember seeing that on like TBS or whatever.
so yeah,
Uh,
which I mean, there again, as a kid, you know, which I'll be honest, this is one I didn't see until I was probably 10 or 11 at least. When I did see it at like 10 or 11, I did see it uncut. So I saw like, I mean, there's like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 sex scenes in this thing. You know, I don't,
uh,
other than Total Recall, I don't know if Schwarzenegger ever did a sex scene again after this movie, but he did plenty of them in this movie.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, like, you know, this movie, you talked, I guess it was in the Deadpool one about like all the CGI that didn't quite hold up because I mean, it never does. I mean, it always really, in a lot of ways, I think a lot of ways it's just gotten worse if you go back and compare the Matrix now, stuff like that. But still, there's change. A lot of the practical effects in this are amazing. The
they
set
are.
designs are huge and
They are.
epic and amazing, and they're real. And like you've got the dogs, and you've got just these opulent. And I mean, I don't know if they're made out of foam or stone or what. They're probably made out of foam, but I mean, that stuff holds up. The effects with that woman turning into the demon beast lady, it holds up. You know what I'm saying? And it's great. But there's a lot going on in the movie because the movie is like 55 minutes over before you get the true call to action of Osric, which is Max von Sydow in a phenomenal cameo.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? He's in the movie for like 3 minutes, but it feels like he's in it for more because he's the one that, hey, I need you to go get my daughter and I'm going to make you rich. And this is why you're going to go. And of course, Subutai and his girlfriend, the great Sandal Bergman, you know, doesn't want to go. They just want to take his rubies and leave. But Conan's like, no, I finally have my path. Like I've got the ability to avenge, you know, my entire village. I'm going to take it, you know. But
Do
there,
you know where
even
they
in
film?
that,
Do you know where they filmed this at, Chris? You might already know.
Italy. Well, I mean, it's filmed. I
Well, it's
know it's
got
filmed
actually
around Italy,
Spain. It's got
Spain.
Spain
Okay, yeah.
in
So Spain, but you
IMDb.
know,
So,
no, that's. I mean, I'm sure it is, but I know this film I think was literally funded by the Italian mafia though, or Spanish mafia or something. Because again, in that Schwarzenegger documentary on Netflix, and there's a part of that documentary where he actually refers to John Milius going to production meetings with a literal like 1911 45 caliber pistol and just laying it on the desk,
wow.
like, yeah, tell me what you want me to do today because I'm not going to do it. There's my 45. Talk to
Wow.
it. Like, yeah,
Hmm.
the 80s,
I didn't
man,
know
it was a
that.
different time.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, dude, there was a lot of movies that had like the Italian mafia involved in it back then, like
Wow.
Paulo Pusolini's like Salo. I mean, they killed him over that. But anyway, I mean, we're getting off topic with that for sure. But anyway, where I was saying there's a lot of writing in this that's so good though, that's very circular. You know, like before he decides to go on this quest that King Osric has asked him to do, Sandal Bergman has this really heartfelt moment with him where she's like, I've never had anything. I've always been cold. I would pass by other people's tents and homes and see them like cuddled and warm. And I want that so much. And, you know, she begs him, you know, that we have found something that's so rare in this world. And then, you know, by the tragic end, you know, where they're star-crossed lovers, she's paid the gods to bring him back, which we can talk about that in a minute, because that was something I didn't understand as a kid either. I completely lost on me that he actually died. But but then she's passing after she's been hit by the snake arrow, and she tells him she's so cold,
Mm.
which of course is referring back. I mean, it's so sad to me to hear, because I mean, it has all these connotations and all these drawbacks that we're foreshadowing that are, coming to fruition.
Yeah.
And I think, kind of like we talked about Rambo, there's a lot more to Conan than your average. Like, this is so you had a lot of sword and sorcery in the movies in the 80s, and I think you had some coming out of the late 70s too, and most of them were garbage. They weren't good. This is like the pinnacle. I would say this might be the pinnacle until like Lord of the Rings.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? Now, like, there's not a lot of sorcery in this, but there's enough. Mako is a sorcerer. He brings him back from the dead. You've got the demon woman that like turns into like a star and flies away or something. You've
Yeah.
got the scene with Crom,
Yeah.
right? Where like his dad, to start the movie, tells the story of the legend of Steel, and the Titans, like the oh my gosh, what's the word I'm thinking of? The Titans, from, they've got a name from Greek mythology.
Uh,
Anyway, that they were cast down, and they were under the earth, like it's Crom. And then so the wolves like drive him under the earth into this under earth throne room with this giant, and it's Crom. And I'm going to tell you, like, I just watched this 4K, and for the first time, still seeing stuff, he grabs that sword, right? And as a kid, I see a skeleton that's holding the sword that kind of falls apart. He
yeah.
doesn't fall apart. What he does is he bows.
Mm.
The hand cascades, the head bows, and he's bowing to Conan, taking up the mantle of steel.
Mm.
And I totally missed that
Yeah.
until watching it this time. But that is what was happening. And
Wow.
like, but that's what I'm saying.
Good
There's a
storytelling.
lot, right?
Yeah.
Yes, the writing is so good, and there's so much that happens in 2 hours and 10 minutes of time.
Yeah.
Because you've got his village getting attacked as a child, and then him going to, I don't know, the test of fates or whatever you want to call it, with his Prometheus kind of challenge. That's real. Prometheus isn't the one that had to push the boulder. I'm trying to think of the Greek god that had to push the boulder up the hill every day, and it always came back down. Anyway, if you want to look it up, you'll be able to find it pretty easy by that description. But I mean, that kind of those illusions in the movie, right? And then you've got him going into the snake temples, which you've got back around that time, right? Then
Right.
you've got the Satanism and the occultism of the 80s and that scare, okay?
Yeah.
And then you had what was the like the Taoist. I'm trying so hard not to cough. They were the Krishnas.
Yeah.
I'm trying to, they're the ones I'm trying to think of. They had a name before the Krishnas, but really, in this particular movie, the hippies that are in it, I think, are the
Almost like
Krishnas,
Charles
which,
Manson back in the day before the
yes,
80s. Yeah.
that's what I'm getting at. And so that's your snake cult. But there again, go back and watch it. You've got all these cities that they visit, and they each have this tower. They're all from a different angle. You know what I'm saying? Like, the effects are so good. I don't think it was a painting. I don't know if it was a model they were able to insert, but I mean, it's seamless, whatever they did, you know? And then you've got the snake monster, the huge snake monster that attacks him. You've got the pupils that dilate, that looks amazing.
The one where
Whenever
James Earl Jones
where
transfers
he
to,
transformed,
that was
yeah,
cool.
that's what I was gonna say. The transformation, because it wasn't, you have the flashes of his eyes, they go from brown to blue to the snake, and then he turns into a huge snake and his head moves around, and then he slithers out. Like, the effects in this thing are so good. And I mean, again, like, when we were kids, we saw it in full screen. There's so much of the screen we were missing,
Oh,
like
yeah.
at the orgy, they're all eating people. They're cannibals. You see a woman eating a hand. Well, you only see that whenever they pull it out of the pot. Well, in the widescreen, that's huge wide, by the way, where you're seeing like people like literally being butchered, like in the background, like heads cut off, stomachs being pulled out, all that kind of stuff. Like, there's the scene where Schwarzenegger is crucified. And I don't know how close you really looked at that, but I mean, that is a really gruesome scene. And like, the effects in that were actually really good. Where his hands are up and he's nailed, they've got these wraps, so I'm sure they've got something that's holding him, whatever. But like, if you look down at his legs, there's no wraps or anything. You just see the nail. And I mean it looks like it's going right through his shin bone. And then if I guess maybe we've got to have an allusion to Christ in there or something since he's being crucified, but then he's got a
Yeah.
cut, on his lower abdomen on the left side, almost
Yeah.
like Christ would have had, like being hit with the spear. You know what I'm saying? So again, talking about different religions, mythologies, whatever being
Yeah.
being used in the movie.
Very deep. Did want to mention how big were those real pythons? Because man, there's some big snakes in that movie. If you're allergic, not allergic to snakes, if you have a phobia of snakes, don't watch Conan, man, because it's a lot of them.
Yeah, dude. Well, yeah, because you had the two brothers. Man, I don't remember their name. It's like Rexer or something like that. Rexiel. I don't know. I can't remember their names, but they both were covered in snakes for a lot of the movie. And then James Earl Jones is petting them like they're his little puppy or something, getting up close to their face and getting them under the chin. And yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, yeah, those were definitely some real snakes. I mean, now like the super gargantuan, that he killed down in the pit. I'm sure that one wasn't real, but I tell you, but the effects were really good though, like legit good. I mean, it wasn't like a
Those are for
Jim Henson puppet.
1982.
It looked great.
Yeah.
So
And the sword play, which is iconic, I think I read where he had to study sword play, horseback riding, and martial arts before this. And some of these swords on IMDb were like $10,000 each, which is a lot of money back then in 1982.
so like his iconic sword that he carries in the two Conan movies, because the one that he has in Red Sonja is not it's similar, but it's not the same.
Right.
Like to me, that was like that and the sword from Lady Hawk that had like the two little spikes halfway up the blade, like those were like the awesomest swords ever to me.
Yeah.
But like if you look though, the swords are a big deal because like Sandal Bergman's got a different sword and hers is great. Subatai's got a different sword and he's like a Mongol or something like that. So his sword is closer to like a Mongol blade. Then you've got the broadsword, the claymore, whatever it is that Schwarzenegger's wielding. But then you got his dad's sword too and his mom's sword that are kind of like very similar. In fact, if you look at the logo, the Conan logo, the sword that's going through it, I'm sure a lot of people would just automatically assume, well, that's Conan's sword he carries. Like, no, actually, it's not. It's his mom's sword that's going through it. That eventually is broken, or his dad's. I'm not actually sure which one. Trying to think back, it may be his dad's, but his mom's and his dad's, if you look at them, were very similar. His dad made them at the same time, but it's basically his parents' sword going through it, not his,
Right.
which is the one that's broken whenever they have that great, like, he and Subutai prepare the graveyard for that battle, where it's two versus many, and his father's sword gets broken by Crom's sword in that battle.
And then did John, I didn't know too much. John, is it Millis? Mullis? Did he
Milius.
did he do any other things? He didn't catch me for a director. Did he done anything? But I could be wrong. I didn't look at his filmograph or anything.
Oh, I mean, yeah, no, he has definitely done a lot. Although, because you're asking me like right on the spot, I'm drawing a blank. I'm sure we could pull it up real quick, but no, he's definitely like, which I know he did a lot of production stuff too, with the dealer Dino De Laurentiis company,
Right.
um, and I think Coppola had some stuff that he did too. But Milius, he did a lot of writing too, and not necessarily the stuff he directed. Which, by the way, I don't know if you remember this, but this movie was written by it was written by John Milius, based off of Edward R. Pressman stuff, and Oliver Stone.
Really?
So
Wow.
yeah, so a lot of people I'm sure don't know that.
Looks like he did Red Dawn,
Yeah,
1984.
Red Dawn with Patrick
1984.
Swayze and Charlie Sheen.
Yeah, motorcycle gang, some Rough Riders, 2 episodes of that. So yeah, and then he looks like he did a lot of he's a writer and producer. Good
Yeah, I
for him.
think he did a lot more writing and producing than he did actual like straight up directing.
Right.
Which, another thing about this movie, Trey, I mean, we're really bouncing around here, but the
Yeah.
scene um before they go in to go get the princess, they're supposed to be thieves, which again, I got to be honest, that was pretty lost on me as a kid too, because they're not very sneaky.
Yeah.
They kind of get into these big fights and are seen everywhere they go. But, I'm I'm not going to say there wasn't a movie before this where they had kind of like the suit up scene. You know what I'm saying? But this
Right.
is the first one I remember, like where you see them tying on the swords and grabbing the arrows and putting on the face paint and the body paint. Where they've got like the black tiger stripes and the white ghost paint or whatever.
Yeah.
And it really, if you really watch that scene, 2 years, 2 or 3, what I guess 2, 3, 4 years later, whenever he did Commando, even though you're using machine
5 years
guns and
later.
grenades and all that, it's essentially the same thing. And I mean, it's
Yeah.
almost like the same pace, which of
Yeah.
course, 2 years later in First Blood Part 2, when Rambo's putting on like, the clips and the MP5 and,
Yeah.
he's got like the rangefinder and all this stuff. It's the same scene, with
Yeah.
kind of the same beats and the same pace and the same, like I'm tying my shoe and I'm dropping the knife in, it's similar stuff. But I think this might be the movie that made that a thing,
Right.
kind of like the suit up montage. I think this is it. I think this is where this started. We
Right.
talked about was First Blood like the beginning of the 80s movies, and we kind of came to the conclusion that maybe not exactly. This is kind of in that same thing. I think this is kind of where like that 80s overindulgence, the big epic fight scenes, the big epic sets, the blood. Oh my gosh, like the sword hits, the spear hits, like they were super bloody. These pop bags, like whenever they got hit, just the spray of blood.
Oh yeah.
Again, I don't know that I can think of movies before this one that were like that. And that's stuff they do with CGI now. And it's like they perfected this 40 years ago. Why are we doing it with CGI? It looks like crap, you
Exactly.
know?
Yeah. I know Ryan Brewer loved them, but do you think this is at the end or kind of at the start of the whole Source and Sorcerer? And I'm sure there was a lot of cheesy
Oh,
knockoffs.
it was not the end. Oh, it was not the end.
Right.
So like
Death
that's kind of what
Stalker.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I started on that a little bit ago. I don't know that I did or didn't finish, but like there were a lot of sword and sorcerer movies in the 80s. I mean, you
Yeah.
had Beastmaster, you had
Oh yeah.
Sheena, you had the Death Stalker series that you just brought up, like
Yeah.
like there was the
Yeah.
Tanya Roberts, not Tanya Roberts. Is it Tanya Roberts that was in Beastmaster and
I think so. I
and
think
Sheena?
so.
I think it is Tanya Roberts. Anyway, you had a lot of those movies that she was in, like the Beastmaster and stuff. Like, no, and I love Beastmaster. I've got a really super sweet, awesome edition of Beastmaster over there. We're going to put on the shorts at some point, the Magical Movie Memorabilia Tour. But it ain't Conan. You know
Oh
what
yeah.
I'm saying? Like, um, but I think this is where they really took off and where it became like a whole subgenre that, I'm trying to remember the Sword and the Sorcerer, the Albert Pugh movie. Did that come out before or after this? I think it might have actually came out before this, the one with the three swords. But off the top of my head, I'm not 100% sure on that.
Hey, Cyborg could have been a little sword and sorcerer to get a little Van Damme in there, little at least sword action.
So I mean, it's like one of those futuristic that's really like kind of behind movies, because it's like we've blown everything to
Post-apocalyptic.
hell, so we've like we've reverted rather than moving forward. But the lighting in this movie too was so good. Like
It
like the
was.
scene where he was being brought back to life. We kind of talked about that a little bit ago, but that was completely lost on me as a kid that he actually died. Because you've got the moment when Subotai running to him that he kind of laughs all funny and just kind of drops his head. I thought he just kind of passed out. You know what I'm saying? But then, of course, as I got older and realized, like, oh no, he really died, and that was kind of the point of Son of Bergman, like paying paying the gods to bring him back because Conan had more to do. He had to build a kingdom on his own brow.
Yeah, ironically, Sword and the Sorcerer, looking back on here from with Albert Pune, was 1982 as well, ironically.
Wow. Okay, so it was the same year again, not Conan. Just want
So,
to throw that out there.
yeah.
But dude, like, there's so much good to Conan. Because like I was saying, like, you have the writing that was so good and so cyclical. You had really, Mako. You had all these characters around Conan that were good.
Mako's
Like,
commentary, like Conan, he sits there and he's telling the
yeah, the
story. He had a great
voiceover
voice.
narration
Yeah,
that he
he's
does to
good.
start my masters, when the seas ran red with blood, this whatever, and then like
Yeah.
the end with, the kingdom by his own hand. Like that's what I'm saying. I think there's a lot of stuff they did in this movie that at the time I think was they were experimenting with it, but it became a thing. It became a trope. You know what I mean? The I'm actually, just because I'm so enamored, I'm actually looking at some pictures on the IMDb. I maybe need to share you what I'm showing, but like the costumes were so good and they were so
It was,
different. You had the
it
two
was yeah.
brothers that, their costumes are so different. You've got James Earl Jones with like the green like snake scales, that's kind of in between like his breastplate and the kilt or whatever he's wearing. You've got
Yeah.
the princess, and even Conan himself going from being a gladiator having no armor, it's leather, he's wearing nothing, to like by the time Osric has given him jewels and he stole jewels, he's wearing like full like chainmail, it looks like Mithril
Right.
from Lord of the Rings or something. Like it just, I don't know. There's so much. It kind of boggles my mind they got all this in one movie, to be honest.
And James Earl Jones, iconic for me, was always when he's showing, "You want to see my power? Come to me, girl." And she just
Yeah,
commits
she
suicide for
jumps.
him, just jumps. And he's like, "That's
He's like,
power."
that is power. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know that I would argue the body was stronger than steel, but the will, that was stronger than steel. Which this was a good way for Arnold to get his weightlifting buddies in there because you had Franco Columbo that was which again talking about pumping iron, that was his roommate and his bodybuilding partner, the little guy. He had like a cameo in Terminator, and he was the scout in this, like right at the very beginning, the guy that kind of stands up on the rock and points the way for the dogs and stuff. And then
right.
you have Sven, who was one of the brothers, and he was, dude, I think he was in everything. He was in Cyborg. A lot of times he's listed as gunman.
Mhm.
That's like his role in the movie is gunman.
Yeah. And then kind of the epic we were talking about earlier, like at the very end, and I like he cuts off I keep wanting to call him Crom, but what was his name? He had James Earl Jones character had a weird name in the movie. Like if you look at the credits.
He was Thulsa Doom, which you talk
Yeah,
about a great name like
yeah,
Thulsa Doom.
it was. But like, and you knew that was a doll head or whatever. You could kind of hear it when he goes thump and it rolls down there, and then he's like does this. But that was an epic
I
scene with all the like all the lights and all the candles and everything. That was a cool
Yeah,
scene
you had
at the
like
very end.
10,000 extras out there with candles that all started putting
Exactly.
them out when they realized that, oh, our great leader that was going to, ascend us is not, he's mortal actually after all. Because, the whole movie he's saying, I've lived for 1,000 years. And, because of some of the mythology, like, did he really live for 1,000 years? Or is this just something he's telling everybody because who's going to fact check him?
Yeah.
I mean, you could argue either way, but I got to be honest, I mean, he hits that guy again, talking about the blood and the gore. He hits him 3 times to cleave his head with
Oh
the
yeah.
sword that he took from his family. And I don't know, man, if you had like bone, like skull, and it hits the concrete the way it does, I don't know that it wouldn't make that sound, which is a blood curdling sound when it
It
hits
was,
and
yeah.
and rolls. But I mean, that was a pretty effective effect. I mean, like,
It was.
it looked pretty real the way they shot it. I'm gonna be honest.
Oh yeah. Yeah, man, classic movie. And then it's been forever since I saw Conan the Destroyer, just to bring it up. Does it kind of like roll into that? Because I know it kind of shows him on the throne where he's old, or how does that start? It's been years since I've seen
So, I
1984, I
mean,
believe.
in the Barbarian, it ends with, it's showing King Conan sitting on his throne.
Yeah.
And it says, of course, this story will be told, which we never did get, at least as of now, which, I mean, really seriously, honestly bothers the dog mess out of me that we can't figure this out. I really, I'm going to be upset if Schwarzenegger passes away before we get that movie. Because I think even now, we talked about it before, like, I mean, Schwarzenegger's not what he was. Neither is Dolph Lundgren, neither is Van Damme. But if you look at their age group, they probably are in the top 5% of their age group. I mean, he can still do it. I mean, he's got like FUBAR and stuff. But anyway, but no, like Conan the Destroyer, um, it's a PG movie. It's not quite like this one, and it picks up with a different cast of characters, which really aren't quite as good as the ones in here, like the side characters. But that being said, you got like Wilt Chamberlain in it, and you've got Andre the Giant in it too, which a lot of people don't realize he's actually the beast at the end that comes to life.
Hmm.
And
Grace
yeah,
Jones.
yep, Grace Jones, who I cannot stand, but she it's because of Grace Jones that we know who Dolph Lundgren is. So I got to thank her for that.
Exactly.
But I mean, we kind of get another in between story where he's still a Cimmerillion or whatever you call him. I think I'm saying that wrong, but he's still a barbarian before he becomes a king by his own hand. But I got to be honest, in a lot of ways, I don't like that one more than Barbarian, but it's got a special place in my heart because I saw that one long before I saw Barbarian because it's rated PG, which for a PG movie, it's a pretty hard PG movie.
Mhm.
And I feel confident we'll talk about that at some point, that particular movie. So I don't know that I want to get too great into detail on that, but
Yeah.
there's like, I mean, I'm talking legit nudity in that movie that I'm, it, a lot of people might miss it because it's not overt, but it's there. And it kind of boggles my mind watching it in today's standards. That movie's a PG movie, but that one actually has more of the sorcery aspect than this one does, where
Yeah.
this one
It
has
does.
more of the blood gore and the down to earth battle stuff. That one's a little more over the top. But but I love them both. And, you've got between, this movie and the next movie, you've got a change in the cast of characters where it's not, it's a new movie. It's a similar call to action story, but it's very different.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, you understand what I'm saying? And then,
Right.
down the way, you also got Cull the Conqueror with Kevin Sorbo. Technically, technically, that's Conan's father. Technically,
Really? Wow.
now, yeah. Now, by that fact, the movies don't have anything to do with each other. It's not like you can take the Cull the Conqueror movie and like put it before the Conan movie. It won't make any sense. They're not congruent, but that is still Edward R. Pressman IP, if you understand what I'm saying. And then you've got Red Sonja, which I can't remember if I talked about this in the short. And again, I really think we could talk about Red Sonja at some point in time. But in that one, he's Calidor is his name. And
Hmm.
in the books, Conan, once he becomes king, one of his aliases is Calidor. So I mean, even though again, you can't explicitly say that's Conan in a lot of ways. It's Conan. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like that's certainly what they were trying to piggyback on was the popularity of Conan to transfer that to Red Sonja.
Right.
Did you see, they had the remake as well that had Jason
Momoa.
Momoa in it, which I never saw. I have it. I have it in 3D. I've never watched it though.
It was okay. It just to me it wasn't Arnold, and he tried to bulk up, but he was more of like a leaner. Even though Jason Momoa is a big guy, but just nothing like Conan or no, nothing like Arnold was in Conan. I mean, it was all right. Didn't blow my hair back, but you can tell they were trying. But I mean, he had long hair, kind of had an exotic look the way he does, but just didn't have the body for it. Even though he's a big guy in these movies like Aquaman, but just it's hard to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger,
Yeah.
It is.
Well, I mean, nowadays you've got, I mean, there are a lot more guys that are large than I think there was back in 1982. But that being said, Arnold is Arnold. You know what I mean?
So yeah.
But which I will. I'm gonna kind of, I guess, get on a tangent here talking about movies nowadays. Watching movies like this, it really makes me yearn for new movies to have stuff like it. It doesn't have to be the same. I like them to be new movies, but I mean, like right now, there's no great masculine action stars. There's like none.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got guys like no offense to Timothy Chalamet or however you say his name with Dune. Dune is fantastic, but I mean, supposedly that's our action heroes now, and that's I mean, the guy wears dresses in real life and he's smaller than I am. I mean, it's just I'm no offense. It's hard for me to see.
Yeah.
With not quite the same, but in that movie Predators, that was Predator 3 that had Adrian Brody in it. One of the things I didn't like about that movie, I'm fine with an action hero being a smaller guy. I mean, I am a smaller guy at the end of the day. I mean, I'm fairly tall, but I'm very, very lean, kind of like what you were talking about. It's hard for me to put on muscle mass, but it's sometimes the way that person is used. Arnold has a role, the other guy has a role too. I mean, I think John Wick is really good. John
Mhm.
Wick's not overbearing, like beating people to death. I mean, he's using his wits and he's using, trajectory weapons in a lot of cases versus like a sword bludgeoning you to death. Do you understand
Hems,
what I'm getting at?
Hemsworth and Extraction, pretty good.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
that's kind of it. I mean, all the action stars we have, I mean, all of them are getting older. I mean, Jason Statham's 55.
Yeah.
You got a lot of these 80s action stars, they're still holding the mantle. Stallone's still Rambo. He's still, Barney Ross in the Expendables. I mean, you got
Yeah.
Bautista, he's getting up in age now. Like,
Dude,
I
he
mean,
looks
who is
totally
it?
different. Have you seen him in the killer
Yeah,
scene?
he's lost like 100 pounds or something like that.
Yeah.
And people were worried that, he was unhealthy or something. I mean, he's come out and says like, no, I've been eating cleaner and I've been doing, martial arts and this other stuff. He was like, I was getting to a point with my age where I was getting really uncomfortable and I had to lose some weight just to survive.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I kind of get it. I mean, because he's getting up there too, I mean,
He
Vin
is.
Diesel's getting up there. I mean, just who is it? Tell me. I don't know. I can't think of anybody that's a younger guy that's I'm like again, I'm kind of hoping maybe we're getting to seeing stuff like The Beekeeper and movies like that. I'm kind of hoping maybe we're turning a corner That we're going to get away from some of this wokeness that we've had that I really feel like has heavily influenced our action movies. And,
Yeah.
something like Furiosa, like I love Furiosa. I have no issue with a female lead and a female hero, a female action star, none. I just want to have the guys too. I mean, I'm looking forward to the Wastelands that's going to have Tom Hardy back as Max, I mean, I want to see that movie too.
Right.
But I think we're kind of at an imbalance right now where we don't have enough masculine action stars. And I would really like you talk about your spin kicks, this, that, and the other. I mean, even Scott Atkins, what Scott Atkins has got to be in his at least mid 40s, if not late 40s at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, anyway, kind of getting a little off Conan and a little into a tirade there. Maybe we'll wind up cutting that. Who knows? But anyway, but I do think it's pertinent, like talking about these kind of movies like this. But
Oh yeah.
Conan is iconic. I do think Conan was kind of one of those movies that started to lead into the opulence, the hyper violent, the hyper bloody, the beheadings, the dismemberment, some of that stuff that you think of, that no holds barred 80s stuff. I do believe it kind of started with this. Maybe not this is the one that set everything in motion, but I think it kind of set where it could. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? It became an international success, kind of the opposite way of what First Blood did. First Blood had one confirmed kill. This one had a lot. You know.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I thought it was a great review, and feel like we've hit all the action stars. Might throw some other guys in there, maybe like a Dolph Lundgren or
Yeah, we ought
Scott
to do a Dolph
Atkins.
Lundgren at some point. You got to hit the Punisher or something. We can talk about it. He's got some good ones out there.
Might need
So
to hit up best Punisher movie. I know that's sentimental, and Chris is already. Let's just say he has
I've got some
opinion.
opinions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Might have to revisit that.
All right. Well, I guess we've hit the end of the tape. We got to hit the rewind button and get to the video store.
That's right. If you're still around, make sure to like, subscribe, share the podcast, trying to make this thing grow. We'll have other great videos and reviews coming up. And hopefully in October, might even touch on some horror movies. That's what I'm looking forward to. Love some
Yeah, I'm
October.
looking forward to that too. We've been talking about some different ideas for October. I think we've got too many, to be honest. I think we've got a lot of really good ones.
That's right. So I really appreciate it. And make sure to be kind, rewind.
All right. See you next time.